The Aztec people were nomads, in which they traveled a lot with no home, until they were given a message. Huitzilopochtli, the god of son of war, told them to move south and said they would make a permanent home. Huitzilopochtli said that the Aztecs' new home would be marked with an eagle sitting on a cactus eating a snake. It took them more than 100 years, but a priest found a sign. It was in the middle of a lake called Lake Texcoco. This lake was shallow, and there were other tribes already living there. The other tribes didn't want to share their land, so the Aztecs were left with the swampy area around the lake for their home. This wasn't all bad, though. Despite all of these problems, they came up with an amazing idea. They not only created canoes for fishing and hunting, but they created floating islands. These are called Chinampas. Chinampas were literally floating gardens in which the Aztecs farmed upon. They created these Chinampas by using floating wooden pallets in which they put dirt upon for farming. They planted and farmed on this dirt and made the best out of their situation. And some of these Chinampas are still used today. Well, it looks like I got a lot of extra time, so I might as well go over the entire Aztec civilization. Eventually, the Aztecs had enough. They decided that if the other tribes weren't going to allow them to have any more land, they would take it. Over time, they started to conquer their unfriendly neighbors over 200 years. They did this through marrying larger tribes' ruling families and combining their strengths. When this wasn't enough, the Aztec warriors went to war. These warriors were very fierce, and they were successful in taking over other tribes, but didn't want to kill their enemies. The Aztec allowed the conquered tribe to live, but they would have to pay taxes. The tribes paid the Aztecs in food, clothing, and even gems. Sometimes, if the local ruler was allowed to live, he was in charge of collecting taxes. The commoners of the conquered tribe weren't as lucky. The captives were used as slaves or to fight other tribes. The Aztecs eventually took over much of Mexico. The Aztecs were known for many things, from their religion-based traditions to their many creations. One of their most prized foundings were two types of calendars. Their agricultural calendar was used to tell them when to farm crops and such. The agricultural calendar and our calendar both had 365 days, only the Aztecs had 18 months a year, with 20 days in each month, including 5 unlucky days. Next, the Aztecs had a calendar of the gods. There were 20 signs and 13 numbers to be fair to each god. The Aztecs were polytheists, in which they worshipped multiple gods. Each god had specific days and weeks, so none felt left out. To honor these gods, the Aztecs did ceremonies that were very gruesome at times. The Aztec people put people on altars and sacrificed them. The people the Aztecs sacrificed were either captives or people of the Aztec, which is why the Aztecs' neighbors really didn't like them. They cut out the heart of the sacrifices, but not the way you think. Even though the Aztec had good supplies, it would be too long and tedious to cut open the chest, so they cut open the stomach because there were no bones in there. The ruler reached in through the hole, grabbed the heart, and then pulled it out. This wasn't enough, so a speaker of the gods, or a priest, or a shaman, used a knife and drove it through the heart. They believed that if they did this, the gods will be very generous and reward the Aztecs through fruitful crops. In addition to the sacrifices, the Aztec people also gave their own blood to the gods during the ceremonies. This was done through bloodletting, which is drawing blood from the body. They did this by having the person swallow a very thorny vine, to which they pulled it back out, which brought out all the blood. The blood was then burned to bring it up to the gods. Unfortunately, the story of the Aztec has to end. For 2 years, starting in 1517, the Aztecs were receiving signs of their downfall. The Aztecs were receiving many natural disasters, such as an earthquake, a flood, and a comet, warning the Aztecs of what was going to happen. In 1519, Hernando Cortez, a Spanish explorer, arrived in Mexico with 500 men. The Aztec believed he was a god because he had fair and light skin, which reminded the Aztec of a god named Quetzalcoatl. The only thing was, the Aztec realized that he wasn't a god, but a conqueror. Cortez teamed up with the Aztec neighbors that had hated the Aztecs and combined to conquer the Aztecs, overflowing their reign. Not only this, but the Spaniards brought diseases, such as smallpox, which led to 70% of the population to die from illness. The Spaniards had to clear advantage. because they had animals to pull carts loaded with food and weapons, whereas the Aztecs didn't have any animals to pull wagons. The Spaniards almost wiped out the entire Aztec population, but lucky enough, some live on today. You know, looking back on this project, I had a lot of fun with it. This project took about 3 days, I believe? Yeah, I'd say 3 days. Anyway, I had to do a lot of things, and I really don't know how to tie knots. In fact, I didn't even have a plan for this project at all. Yeah, I basically just started going around and improvising with whatever I had at the moment. And I'd say that I did a pretty good job, for the least part. I admit that I procrastinated a lot during this assignment, but hey, at least it got finished. Anyway, yeah, I had a lot of fun with this project and hope I can do this again sometime. Anyway, this project needed one more important ingredient that the Aztecs had used long ago. Poop! Don't worry, it's not real. It's clay.